Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled "Neighbor repeatedly used my driveway claiming it is public land. I sued her and won." I moved to an area that is not really farmland, but everything is pretty rural. For example, my driveway is not paved and instead it is just the gravel that a paved driveway is usually built over. I don't really mind this, but I know that it is not going to last long and decide to save up the money to get it paved. In the meantime, I was just going to be sparse in using it, so I would not really need to get it replaced. It was a really long driveway that went all the way into the back of my property, and I parked my car as close to the street as possible. This way, if any of the road needed to have extra work done, it would just be a small section. It's also important to note for this story that there is no kind of fence or barrier between me and the neighbors that live behind me. It really didn't take me long to hate these neighbors because they seemed to not care that they acted like trash people. They were loud and drunk late at night, and I could even see garbage piling up on the side of their yard. It wasn't any of my business how they acted since they were on their own property and these were only minor annoyances. That was until I found out that they were using my driveway without permission. That's right, they were bringing their cars and truck over the grass and onto my driveway without even asking me. Sometimes going as far as driving through the whole thing and going over my grass to get around my car, since it would save them time getting to the main road. I was not having any of this and I tried to catch one of them in the act as they drove. This plan failed quickly as seeing me did not seem to deter them and I was actually worried about getting hit. They were not driving slowly either and the wear and tear on the gravel was obvious very quickly. I went to plan B, which was to go to their house and explain to them calmly that I did not want them using my driveway because it was mine. I was not going to mention my plans of paving since I felt they might take that as an invitation to use it. A man opened the door and despite being the late afternoon, it looked like he just woke up. Me, "Hello, I'm your new neighbor that moved in behind you. Neighbor, what do you want?" Wow, friendly way to greet your new neighbor, right? Anyway, me, "I noticed that some cars from your property have been going through my driveway to get to the main road. I would prefer that you did not do that and instead went around with the side street because you are damaging my grass and driveway." Neighbor, "Wait, are you saying that is your car blocking the main road?" Me, "You mean the car I park at the end of my own driveway?" Neighbor, "That driveway is public property and we've been needing to go around you for ages. I could call the cops and have you arrested." Me, "It actually is not public property. It is my driveway that I got when I bought the property." Neighbor, "You better check your facts and find somewhere else to park." He closed the door on me and I was stunned. For a little while I thought that maybe I had somehow been the one to mess things up and that the driveway was not considered my property. I went into the town hall and asked if somebody could help me figure out who it really belonged to. I was glad to hear that it was in fact my property and asked if I could get a copy of the paperwork. I thought showing it to the neighbor would make them understand and at least stop doing it. I would have preferred an apology, but I knew from their behavior already that it was not going to happen. Instead, he told me I was wrong again and the illegal use of my driveway continued. Funnily enough, for claiming that it needed to be cleared to get to the main road, they sure left their cars and trucks parked a lot. I decided that I was not going to keep messing around with these neighbors and instead just let a lawyer figure things out. I got cameras and plenty of video proving that they were using it along with that paper from the town. I even sent a letter to the neighbors that I had them sign to prove that they got it, stating that I was formally requesting them to stop using the driveway. While the case was going on, I felt like I needed to get a little bit of revenge of my own on their cars. I did not want to damage them or anything that would get me in trouble, just be a little bit of a thorn in their side. I wanted them to be as frustrated as I was, even if it was for just a little while. I decided that I was going to put a bumper sticker on their car and truck that they were not going to be happy about. Without going into detail, let's just say where I live there is a very outspoken voice for one political party. So a bumper sticker on their cars supporting the other party seemed really funny to me. You can guess that it was not funny to them, and I got to watch them spend half a morning trying to peel it off as best as they could. It was not much, but it made me feel better. As for the lawyers, I finally got my day in court and presented all of the evidence to a judge. The neighbor showed up without a lawyer because he was so convinced it was public land and that he was going to win. The look on his face when the judge explained to him that it was my driveway, and just because the previous owners let him use it does not mean that I had to, and that it was not public for his use. He was warned that if he parked on my driveway, I was in my right to get it towed at his expense. If he went through it, he was considered trespassing and I could call the police on him. I ended up getting a restraining order against the neighbor that was just enough to keep him off of my property. That way, if he did try and trespass again, he would also be getting arrested for violating the restraining order. He was angry and I knew that if we were not in front of a judge, he would have said some colorful things to me. Instead though, he just walked out looking angry and knowing that he lost. It was a mixed bag of a win because at the end of it all, I was out a bunch of money. I had to pay the lawyer and also save more to get the driveway redone. It took a lot longer than I wanted it to because they had basically destroyed portions of it and I had to make it from scratch. I know I could have just kept using the gravel or gotten something cheaper, but I wanted the pavement so I did not need to worry. I also shortened the driveway so that it did not seem to be connecting the two houses anymore. So far, the neighbor has listened to the judge and stayed far away from me and my property. If he comes back, you can be sure I'll be ready with the police and maybe some more fun bumper stickers in hand. I might have been new in town, but messing with my property was the worst way you could have introduced yourselves. I am just going to keep an eye on them and maybe even look into getting a fence installed so there's some kind of divider in between us just in case. I don't want to have to go back to court over where the property line is and other stuff I read on here. And yeah, ripe stars, if you also ever had entitled awful neighbors, then please feel free to share your stories in the comments, and while you're at it, I would also really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content, and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled Towing Revenge. Just so this story makes more sense, I live in a smallish gated community and me and my neighbor's house are in the corner of the community and our garages face each other so we cannot pull out at the same time, etc. because it is a tight space. Our direct neighbors consist of a couple and their kids. The wife is nice enough, the kids are okay, but the husband, recently found out he is now ex-husband, is a total a-hole. We will call him Sam for the purpose of the story. We and the community HOA has had multiple previous issues with Sam. First was the night that he was in the house screaming obscenities at the top of his lungs to his wife in the garage. The cops were called, but nothing happened. The second was him illegally dumping a mattress outside our gate, which he was recorded doing on various Ring doorbell cameras and then was reprimanded. And then there was the incident with my mom. My mom, who had cancer at the time, was headed to an appointment and she opened the garage to leave, and Sam's huge truck was parked outside of his open garage and therefore blocking my mom from leaving. He was nowhere to be found. My mom sat patiently waiting for 15 minutes before honking her horn. Not even 30 seconds later, he emerges from his house and stands behind my mom's car, angrily screaming that my mom is a witch and he knows we reported him for the mattress. Which, by the way, we didn't, and yelling F you etc. at the top of his lungs, waving his arms in the air like an idiot. Finally, he gets in his truck and whips it around so my mom can leave, now late for her appointment. That is when we knew Sam was a complete a-hole. After that incident, we noticed more often that he would just park his truck in front of his garage, again therefore blocking ours, and would disappear for 30 to 40 minutes. The final straw happened last week. I am at work and get a Ring doorbell notification that my mom is entering through the front door. Which was weird because that means she did not park in the garage, she parked in one of the parking spots in the neighborhood. And yes, there is other public spots in the neighborhood that Sam could have been parking in. And in the background of the camera I can see Sam's dumbass truck once again blocking our garage. 30 minutes go by and it is still there and I am fed up. I screenshot the video feed and sent it to a member of the HOA and sent a message outlining how this has been happening for months, etc. and that he screamed at my mom. And what did they do? They called a tow truck. F you, Sam. And yeah guys, I guess this is one of those rare HOA stories where the HOA is not actually the bad guy in the story. If you have ever lived in an HOA neighborhood, did you ever have any positive experiences? Please feel free to share your story in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit, where you can post your own story and there is a good chance that I will read it in a future video. And the next one is also from r/entitled people and it is titled Entitled Awful People. Years ago we decided to move closer to my parents. The housing choices were slim, but we found a dilapidated house close by. It looked like it needed lots of work and seemed overpriced for the area, let's just say 200k. We organized a viewing to decide on it and brought my very practical dad with us for a second opinion. The viewing was conducted by the owners and from the very beginning they were off. They had never sold the house before, we were the first people to view it and they actually said to us during the viewing they were doing us a favor for offering us their Hoarder's Paradise house at such a great price. We told them we wanted to move closer to my parents and I think they assumed we were desperate. We got home, had a think and the next day offered the agent a price below the asking price which we believed to be suitable for its condition. Hours later the agent calls back and says that the owners are going to pray on it for a week and then give us an answer. For your information, this time span is unheard of in my country, an answer is usually given in a day. A week later they decline our offer, we offered the agent another 2k. The agent calls back and apologetically tells us the sellers refuse to give us an answer yet because A, they have not even started looking for a house yet, and B, the owners believe they can sell it for more than the asking price now, so they will get back to us when they were ready and we would have to wait. We rescinded our offer. A month later we find a house in the same area with a lot less work needed and at only 180k. Our offer through the same agent was accepted and we moved in 4 months later. During this time the agent calls us and says the entitled sellers have found a house now and would like to offer us their house at the original asking price. We declined. I was interested in the progress of the old house, the sale sign had not moved, so I chatted to the agent. He told me we were the only offer in 6 months and these people had been an absolute nightmare from the start. They expected the agent to pay for cleaners ready for the viewings and would not take any advice to help with the sale. Remember, Hoarder's house. He also said that they had recently put a deposit on a house against his advice before selling theirs, so now the old house is going up for auction because they needed the cash. I instantly called my dad. He was looking for a property for my sister and had already seen the house. He was interested. So off we popped to the auction house on the day and bid for it. The owners were in the room but had not noticed us. When the hammer went down, Dad owned the house for 110k. He signed off the sale and paid the deposit just as the previous owners came to the office. Their faces were a picture. I gave them a crab-eating grin and left. The next one is titled, They Wanted Everything. This happened a few years ago, I only just remembered it and finally realized it was a genuine Karen encounter. My mom and I stopped by the post office on the way home. At the time we were in a Mini Cooper. There was only one other car in the whole parking lot up in front of the building. There were 2 available spots to the right of it, directly in front of the entrance, and several to the left. Mom pulled into the open spot furthest to the right, leaving an open empty spot between hers and the other vehicle. My mom then gets out of the car and grabs the mail. It took 2 minutes at most. Walking back out, an older man in his 70s had rolled down his window in the other vehicle and began accosting my mom for parking right next to him. Oh, there is an entire parking spot between us, no? replies my mom. Now, these are not compact parking spots, these are extra wide because this is a rural town and pickups, work trucks and vans are more of the norm, so you could have fit nearly a whole Mini Cooper and a half between the two vehicles. The man then continues to complain that we park too close. How's my wife supposed to get into the car? And he starts condescendingly instructing my mother to get into her car and park somewhere else, and even how to park, and on about why it was not okay to park so close to his vehicle and that his wife could not get into the car with how close we were parked, and that no one is allowed to park in the first parking spots but them. At this point I'm wondering if his wife is disabled and using a motorized scooter, though there was beyond enough room to accommodate her if that was the case. There was also a handicapped parking spot further down near the ramp for the walkway, so it would not explain why they parked there anyway. None of this made sense. My mom started arguing back that she was parked nowhere near his vehicle as the man's non-handicapped wife, also in her 70s, walks out, sees our Mini and starts complaining about how we are parked too close to her car. At this point, in a rare moment of rational thinking on her own part, my mom comes to the same conclusion I did. That this is not worth our time and this was going nowhere, so she just gets in the car as both old cooks continue to rant at us and we just leave. And the last one is titled, Busybody Stay-at-Home Mom Neighbor Harasses Me Until My Restraining Order Kicks Her Out of Her House. I lived across the street from a very bored stay-at-home mom whose excess idle time turned her into an insufferable busybody. Her husband backed out of the driveway and slammed into my roommate's car parked on the curb. He apologized, gave us his insurance info and took care of it. He was never a problem because he accepted responsibility for what he did. His wife, however, demanded that we never ever park any cars at the curb again because we cannot get out of our driveway otherwise. The street was very wide, she was just completely unable to accept that the accident was her husband's fault and figured we were somehow responsible for it, ergo we were responsible for preventing it in the future. We told her that we would avoid parking there whenever possible, but that we still had the legal right to park on the street and that if necessary we would still do so, and that it was her and her husband's responsibility to avoid hitting other people's legally parked cars when backing out of the driveway. She was not happy with that answer, but just told us we better stay out of her family's way and stormed off. One day she came storming over, banging on the front door, cussing us out. We got her on our security camera saying, "If you don't move that effing car in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to effing total it with my truck. It will be your fault and you will have to pay for the damage to my vehicle." To this I simply responded, "I don't know whose car that is, but I didn't park it there. I have you on camera, so if you do anything to that car, I will have to call the police and hand over this tape." She then threatened to sue me for invasion of privacy for recording her and still insisted that we move the car even though it was not our property. We just ignored her and she did not do anything to the car. We did keep the recording though. A few weeks later I had a friend visit from out of town. He parked his car on the curb and then started unloading some stuff from his trunk. She came storming out, screaming and cussing at him. "I have told you repeatedly never park your effing car on this curb. If you don't move it, I'm going to total it and you can pay for a new goddamn car, as well as the damage you do to mine." He tried to calm her down and asked if there was somewhere else he could park, and she replied, "You can park it in hell, because that is where you will be after I kill you." Unfortunately for her, he had his dash cam running the whole time and it captured everything. He called the police and she was arrested for threatening to commit vandalism and for threatening violence. A few days later, she left a long-winded hate letter in our mailbox. It was written as if it were an open letter from the entire neighborhood, and it basically said, "Nobody knows who you are," and "Everyone wishes you would move away," and "Nobody wants you living in our neighborhood." The thing is, she forgot about the security cameras. I took the video of her opening my mailbox, which included her taking all our letters out of the mailbox and riffling through them. and I gave them to the post office. This led to her getting arrested for a second time that week. After that, we used her 2 arrests, our collection of security and dashcam footage, and her letter to get a restraining order against her that actually prohibited her from entering her own home, and then we called the police every time we saw her because she was in violation of the order. She ended up having to live in a hotel room, and her husband came over, apologized to us and asked if we would drop the restraining order so his wife could come home. I told him I would do it, but only if she wrote me, my wife, our roommates and the friend of mine she threatened a 1-page apology for her harassment, and that she would promise to never ever contact us again for any reason whatsoever moving forward. I received no apology, and the house went on the market a week later. Some effing people. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.